Hello, everyone. This is just a short video to mark the fact that I hit 300,000 subscribers here on YouTube recently, which is exceedingly neat. And to celebrate that, I thought I'd answer some questions that were posted at me on Twitter. And let's just get straight to it. Matrayer_ asks, what are your thoughts on vanilla Coke? I'm aware you've tried it, but ever since your 100 quand I've been up at night thinking about this one. Well, Matrayer_, I don't really like vanilla Coke. I don't hate it or anything, but I can't really foresee myself wanting to drink it over, say, water. So, I never do. Right. William Fuhustel asks, is there a video you'd love to remake/do over if you got the opportunity to? And the answer to that is yes. All of them. I can only see the mistakes or things I left out or could have phrased better, and so on when I watch me old videos. And I'd like to go back and just take everything down and redo it to be better. But that can be kind of a black hole, you know. Just endlessly tinkering with own topic, trying to get it perfect. I find it helps to focus on trying to make the next thing better. Not that I have much success. Mr. Such says, being a white-haired cis-British man, you do a good job acknowledging your various privilege. Oh, thank you very much. Do you ever reach out to groups of people that are not these things? And if so, how do they generally respond to your curiosity? How do you avoid threatening that space? Well, I do this occasionally when writing. I reach out to people for help with a script if I think they'll have more first-hand experience with the topic. And this is one thing I change about me old videos, actually, since getting this sort of help is a lot easier if you have a bigger platform. Outside of work, though, I tend to just follow a range of people on Twitter and read what they say. Can you hear that drilling upstairs? I don't know if that's picked up on the microphone. They like drilling screws into a metal plate, is what it sounds like, and it's been going on for hours. Anyway, at Caspian, I suppose, says Bernie or bust, or blue no matter who. And I have a lot of opinions about this, but I will try to keep it short. First off, nobody is really blue no matter who. If David Duke ran as a Democrat for some reason, and then every other candidate spontaneously combusted or whatever, no Democrats are gonna be like, blue no matter who, #voted Duke. I hope not, anyway. Also, we should really draw a distinction between the primary and the general. In the primary, I understand the actions of the me candidate or busters, and I think the blue no matter who folks are jumping the gun a bit, threatening to withhold your vote even if you wouldn't really, is a fair tactic to influence the primary, in me opinion, anyway. When Bernie Sanders wins the primary, though, then it will be 100 blue no matter who. Atsachari 27,636,551 says, why are you so into Bernie when you Brit? And the answer to that is I'm not, really. Sanders just represents the best available compromise between me opinions and what is possible within mainstream politics. Plus, a Sanders win would be very energizing for the left internationally. It to show that even in the United States, with the media and political establishment lined up against the left, it's still possible to make progress in that system. And an additional reason for why I care about this when I'm British is that me country is currently doing everything it can to reduce itself to an American vassal state. So I don't really have a choice, unfortunately. At Ninipin says, which political parties do you support? By that I mean what? British, American party, and so on. Well, I don't support political parties unconditionally. I support them if they support policies that I agree with. And I think the impulse to identify personally with a party, as in, I am a Democrat, I am a Republican, I am a Lib Dem, and so on, I think that's harmful and limiting. That said, though, I'll support Labar and the Democrats when they re being sensible, which is, every so often, occasionally. At Thomas Locke Music says, in your opinion, what are the biggest reasons for Labar's defeat? And do you think a socialist Labar could win in the next or any future election? Well, helpfully, in answering this question, there was another general election just a couple of years before the last one, in which Labour gained seats. So we can ask what was different between those two elections to lead to the worst performance, and the big obvious answer is Brexit. Right. So, Brexit's imminence. The way it cut across party lines in a way that hurt Labour more than the Tories, Labour's changing and unclear policy on Brexit, relative to the Conservatives anyway, those were probably the biggest factors. Labour were in a very tricky position with regards to Brexit, and it would be easy to say they should have not tried to appeal to both sides and just picked a hard pro or anti-Brexit stance, but all of their options would have ended up appealing to some voters, while still also probably turning off enough other voters to lose the election. It's very hard to see a path to victory for them at all, to be honest. It would also be easy to dismiss Corbyn's popularity as a factor here, since he was also the leader in the previous election when they did much better. But that might be too hasty. It's possible that the constant smearing in the press just took that long to really penetrate into the opinions of most voters. Maybe the extra 2 years of negative press really had that much of an effect. As for whether a socialist Labour could win a future election, of course they could. Labour's policies remain popular. We just have to figure out how to get them into government and get those policies enacted. Atterwegert says, oh, I don't know, and if you figure it out, please tell me. At Curiosity says, well, I've previously answered this question by saying ginger nuts, but I think they've fallen to second place behind Bourbons, at least for the time being. Curiosity also asks, what are American biscuits? Again, they read just like bread, right? Just like bread circles. I don't know. We call it bread. At Lacking Saint says, okay, I get asked this a lot, so I think it's time to officially announce the next Cinemasons debunking video. The next Cinemasons video will be made when I hit 1 million YouTube subscribers, which will never happen. So never. At Caspian again. Well, you got an extra question. I didn't read who actually asked these until now. What's your opinion on the dirtbag left? This is one of those terms that I never quite know what it means, because I see it used in so many contexts. If it means leftists who are rude online to blue-check journalists who supported the Iraq war, then the dirtbag left are good. If it's being used to mean leftists who like to say racial slurs, then the dirtbag left are bad, So, I'm not really sure. It's relative, I suppose. At Voidberger asks, well, I'm sure we'll have to go to the United States at some point. Right. When I'm there, we should hang out. At Casey Explosion says, which do you prefer, my sloth or cow for Sona? The cow was all right, but I'm a sloth purist, I think. At Cubbuth says, how many worms? Just one, but a really big one with a human face. At Wadi_311 says, why are a lot of videos from yourself, Harrisnet, so long now? I am sure has something to do with YouTube metrics that I don't understand, but honestly, It just means I have several hours of content in me watch later and no time to sit around and absorb it. Well, I can only really speak for myself here, but one reason is that when your channel is smaller, you work on projects you know you can get out faster, because you have to pay rent and bills and the like. I could have made several videos in the time it took me to make the video about the bell curve, for instance, and combined, they would have received more views. And that's a compromise I can afford to make now with a larger channel, whereas a couple of years ago I wouldn't have been able to. So as a smaller channel growing to a larger one, you sort of sideline all of your longer projects that you're not able to work on right then, but then when you can work on them, you've got a bunch of very long projects to make, you know. At Cecilia 84,379,486 says, do you think a U-buy in the next couple of decades is feasible and desirable? Feasible, yes. Desirable only if it doesn't come at the expense of other social programs. I mean, it's saying we gonna give everyone 1,000 a month if we gonna cut 1,000 a month per person at the same time. At Lily Tranicist says, are you planning on doing any more pseudo-responsive videos like you had for people like Sargon and Ups in the past? And sure thing, I don't see why not. All that's really changed in this regard is that I have a rule to only go after really big videos or channels with more reach than mine has. So that's usually channels with more subs than me, or particular videos that got a lot of views. So as me channel grows, the list of available people I can make responses to shrinks. So if you want to see me go after some tinny channels, you all just have to unsubscribe, I suppose. At Fearlove, the rule of law. I get it. When will you go on Chapo? Scene. Oh, never. I will never go on Chapo. Not because I have any particular antipathy for Chapo. I've never listened to Chapo. But the number of people who ask me when I'm gonna go on Chapo. I mean, every time I am asked, it's an extra week before I'd ever consider it. I don't even know if they want me to go on there, or would know who he was. Thanks for the question. At Myopic Duck says, if you could visit any period or event in history, when and where would you go? Oh, thinking about this, I would probably be incredibly boring and go and look around Rome. At, say, the height of the Roman Empire. Jesus Christ. How uninteresting. But that is what I would do. At Flavel 987 says, when will God still your sinful hands? Geez. At Meta_3 wants to know my thoughts about some responses to me bell curve video. And my main thought is that so little of the response to the video actually focuses on defending the bell curve. Mostly from what I've seen. Anyway, they spend their time attacking me and guessing at me motivations and trying to have different arguments. And I get that it is very difficult to actually defend the book itself. So you have to pivot to talking about something else. And once I saw those sorts of responses coming in, I knew I'd stuck the landing with the video. At Ludocivis says, will you make a video on refuting the new Charles Murray book? Hopefully not. I mean, I made a video about the bell curve because decades after it was published, people still talk about it. Charles Murray's new book is called Human Diversity, I think. And it's possible that in 6 months no one will ever talk about that book ever again. And therefore, me reading it would be a huge waste of me time. So AMILC. It depends how well it does. At Wabu5 says, still water or sparkling water? Still, obviously. At Rods says, Your favorite album of all time. Oh, I consider music to be kind of a personal thing to talk about. It's like letting someone read my diary, or as I don't actually have a diary, but if I did have a diary, I'd feel similarly about sharing that with someone as me musical taste. Um, that said, the Sonic the Hedgehog to a video game soundtrack. At Not Cecilia, Seckley 84,379,486 says, how do we successfully integrate migrants, or is that even a necessity at all? Well, there's two types of migrants to overgeneralize. There's people who want to move to a place because they like it there, and the integration mostly takes care of itself on that one over a long enough time period anyway, although there can still be problems. And there's people who don't want to go to a place and have to, you know, either refugees fleeing somewhere dangerous or economic migrants who move looking for work or a decent wage and so on. So the best way to successfully integrate migrants would be to first make there be fewer migrants who would be difficult to integrate. And that's not through misguided bans or wall building, but by not bombing and exploiting the areas people are moving away from in the first place. You don't get to complain that refugees are fleeing a country if you rebombing it or destabilizing its government or seizing all of its natural resources. You know, we ousted a government and imposed crushing economic sanctions, and now that country's in chaos and people want to leave it, and also they hate us. Who could have seen that coming? At Butling. Butlington Boots. At Butlington Boots asks, what accounts for the rise in anti-breadtube sentiment on the left, and is there something breadtube could have done to avoid it? Well, the thing to remember here is that breadtube is a label applied from the outside by outside observers. There's no breadtube club where we set the breadtube agenda, you know. And as for a rise in anti-breadtube sentiment, I'm not sure there is one, to be honest. Things look pretty much the same to me. Anyway, if there are more people who don't like the various lefty content creators on YouTube, that just seems to me to mainly be because the overall audience is growing. You know, the more people become aware of you, the greater number of people are gonna dislike you, unfortunately. At sock_wumble says, are you planning on making more videos like your one on privatization? You rarely have a knack for explaining topics like that. Thank you very much. I'd love to see one on Marx's theory of labor, for example. Yes, I had a whole series of videos like that one planned, but for various reasons it got put on the back burner. It is still something I'm thinking about returning to, though. I've learned not to make promises, but yes, at some unspecified point in the future, more videos like that one will be made. Atso Brug says, how do you feel about the current state of internet discourse? If you had to critique the way people go about it, what would your big takeaway be? Thanks. Well, the main point I would like to make would be to tell people who argue about the most effective leftist tactics that there's usually more than one way to skin a cat, which is a horrible saying. So there's usually more than one way to solve a problem. Different approaches work with different people. If someone is out there doing something to bring people over to the left, even if it isn't the exact way you would do it yourself, instead of arguing about the single best tactic we should all do, we should instead be doing lots of different things. You know, this town is big enough for the two of us. At Cameron Skullman says, do you think we should censor the alt-right on social media? Yes. Well, it depends exactly what the words we should and censor mean in this sentence. And Should private companies ban the far right from using their services? Absolutely. Should we as individuals work to deplatform and defund them? Of course. Should the government arrest them? Though, well, if they haven't broken a law, then no. At John Olin Devo says, how do you like your toast? Very lightly toasted. I basically just like warm bread. At Oatmeal in Leetspeak says, how do you feel about incel ideology or the black pill? Will you ever make a video about it? Well, ContraPoints made a video about this, which was very good. I do have a video about the same thing planned, though although I had a slightly different angle I was gonna comment it from, so we'll see. Again, no promises on time frame for that one. But that is something I'm working on, yes. At Nicholas_a_Cook says, the rule is generally, takes 10 times as much effort to debunk as it does to create. Have you found any ways to bring that ratio down or strategies to streamline the process of debunking reactionary nonsense? What's the first step? Well, rather than trying to match the pace and volume of the nonsense, which would be impossible, I found that you can instead use particular approaches to make the instance of debunking much more effective than any individual lie would be. This is something Free Arrows does in his recent video about Black Pigeon Speaks, which is very good, and I'll put a link below so you can check that out. Rather than just point out someone is lying, you can use that lie as a foundation to explain the motivations behind it. And that hopefully will show the audience how to spot similar lies with similar motivations in the future, or at least prompt them to be much more questioning of similar nonsense. At Real Congo Otto says, do you sometimes feel like there's no point in debunking alt-right myths/conspiracies, since the people who take them seriously will most likely dismiss you based on your political views? Well, a lot of them will, but a few of them won't. And if a few of them change their minds because of it, then I've won as far as I'm concerned. Atta_Googly says, when are you making more video game content? On YouTube, probably never. However, I stream 3 times a week on Twitch, and I'll put a link to me channel below so you can go and check that out. At Tango Pianista says, how do you define being a leftist for yourself? Is it a term you can gatekeep at all? What are views you think any leftist categorically must have and or not have? Well, This is another video topic I have in mind that I've made a few notes for. Actually, obviously, there's a lot of subjectivity involved with the terminology here, and there are many different factors. But form, the first thing that jumps to mind when placing someone on the political spectrum is to what extent that they have a hierarchical worldview. So people on the right tend to have a more fixed hierarchical worldview with regards to both social issues and economics. Liberals tend to favor a hierarchy, but with air quotes, opportunities for people to move within it. So affordable health care and means-tested benefits and student loan debt forgiveness programs for Pell Grant recipients who start a business that operate for 3 years in disadvantaged communities and other rubbish like that. Conditional equality, basically. You've got the opportunity for equality. How nice. And leftists tend to favor actual equality, so the eradication of the hierarchy. Of course, that's just one aspect of a complicated issue, using terms with different meanings to different people. That's just how I happen to see it. And it's all relative, really. My positions on certain issues see me getting called a centrist by some people and a communist by others at the same time. At Burb on the internet says, which non-politically focused YouTubers do you enjoy? And I've paired this with another question from at Hardy Roach, which is who's the best YouTuber and why is it Jenny Nicholson? And yes, I've been watching a lot of Jenny Nicholson's videos lately, and they are excellent. So go and subscribe to Jenny Nicholson's channel if you haven't already. I'll put a link below for you and everything. At Spidermantifer says, would you recommend any cool YouTubers with pink hair who make good videos? Well, Spidermantifer, it sounds like you should take a peek at the channel named Curio, as I believe they check all your boxes there. I'll again put a link below in the description so that you, or anyone else who wants to see some good internet videos, can check that channel out. At Onomelon says, what are smaller creators you recommend? Well, beyond Curio there, something I've been meaning to do for a while is a little shout-out video pointing people towards some channels that make good content, but maybe don't have the recognition they deserve. I've been asked on Twitter a few times for video recommendations, and in further preparation for that eventual video, I will throw it open to the comments here. So, who are some smaller YouTubers who make good content that needs more views? I'd really appreciate all of your input on this. And I've just realized I'm gonna have to read some YouTube comments at some point in the future, which is never a fun experience. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and all that jazz. Free, oh, fucking neighbors, Jesus Christ.